So let's get started. Like I said, I am here with Tim Winters, who is our CTO. And Tim actually has a long history with this kind of stuff because he has been kind of in the trenches of IPv6 for his whole life. And it ends up having some really, really poignant effects on, how much it affects interoperability of smart home devices. I think, what was it, Tim, at the IOL, all of the cameras that you ended up testing for IPv6.
Yep, those were the start. Those were some of the first gadgets we got for IPv6 for sure.
Yeah. So he's going to be, he's actually been spearheading the development of PassPort and figuring out what it is exactly that we need to test and why. And so that's a little bit what he's going to be talking about today. So we're going to cover a little bit about the state of the smart home industry right now. Kind of to set the stage for why it is that testing is so important right now and where it is right now, like what people are actually doing for testing, if at all, of smart home products. And then some of the roadblocks that are preventing them from doing it well or better, or doing more testing. And then we're going to show you a live demo of PassPort and show you the test cases that it has, what to test, and how to run it in PassPort, and how it can help improve your dev process. And then we'll talk about some of the next steps for people who are interested. So why don't you take it away, Tim?
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit. Thanks for the introduction, Jason. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where IoT is today. This first slide here, we got smart homes by the numbers, and some of these are just fascinating to me. How many devices there are, 13.5 billion devices is what they're estimating. $23 billion just in the entertainment industry alone. So you're talking, smart speakers, Apple TVs, Roku's, all of those things, speakers. All of us have really enjoyed all the new sound updates with all these streaming services, all the many speaker options you have. All of this is a lot of money, but they also need to be networked and work together as part of the smart home. Obviously, above and beyond entertainment stuff, there's, lights, garage doors, all of those things that you have as part of securing your home nowadays. All of those kind of factor in. This report here shows, 20 devices overall per household at a minimum. I think obviously some of the more advanced engineering type like myself are going to have a lot of devices. I look today and I think currently at my house, there's 35 different devices. And I think that a lot of that has to do with, smart home things also in the COVID time, working from home. All of this means that your house is more networked and all of these things need to work together. And having that, the work together part leads to interoperability challenges of these IoT devices. And a lot of this include things like, basic connectivity. Can it connect? Can I get online? Those kind of things. Jason alluded to, we have a lot of experience with IPv6, and this is a common one that comes up. So there's a lot of issues with making sure, how does v6 work? What's different than v4? How does that affect my IoT device? DNS is a major part of this nowadays. A lot of IoT devices need to make sure their DNS works so that as cloud services, as things change, that they're properly using the right connections. Wi-Fi is always a big one in homes. So, there's always new stuff happening in the wireless technology space. And so that's always an area of stability. If a device is going up and down, that causes problems on the network, causes, bad user experience. If they're intermittent connectivity, they want to make sure that a device, when it connects to a network, stays connected so that it's up to date and knows what's going on. It's very frustrating as a user if something happens on the Wi-Fi network and you don't realize your IoT device can't connect anymore. Those kind of things are important for people to test and make sure that it can interop with all of the devices in your home, mainly the home gateway, which we'll talk a little bit more. That's obviously the nexus of your home network, the wireless APs, the home gateway. All of that is kind of the backbone to your home network. So we talked about all these interop issues, so what are people doing for testing that? What is the current state? We talked to a lot of people about this. We have experience between CloudShark and CD Router working with a lot of companies. And so we talked to them about some of their, what are you guys doing in the home networking space? And what we found is, the lab testing was limited, mostly because they're very diverse home networks. So it was very difficult to create multiple home networks or replicate all of the potential home networks that people can have set up, whether it's multiple APs, whether it's just the service providers are providing very different gateways, regionally for sure, across the globe. They all have different technologies and what services they're essentially giving out. Also, in today's world, ISPs are moving certain services into the cloud, for example. And so everyone's going to have a slightly different experience, and replicating that can be difficult. In particular, in security today, there's always changes with what ports, what services will work and how they work. So that's a real problem. So a lot of the issues were coming up in the field. Because of all of those, you want to test all of these different, it's a small IoT device, but there's lots of areas to cover. So it's very time consuming to make sure that you're covering all of these areas. You don't want customers calling you. That drives up the support calls, whether you're an ISP or an IoT manufacturer, right? ISPs get just as many calls because there's no one, it's the first person you call is your ISP often for a user. They're not necessarily going to call up the manufacturer and say, hey, I can't connect to my network. People associate that with an ISP. So they have to do a lot of extra testing as well, just making sure that they have their bases covered for what the IoT devices need to do. And the biggest thing we heard from customers was, people who are in this space trying to verify their devices was they're doing the testing manually. They're setting up these networks, and there's a person sitting there trying to run this testing to set it up in a way. And that leads to a whole series of problems, testing roadblocks that occur because of the testing manually. So, the first thing that comes up is there's many different home gateways, and you want to make sure that you interop with all of them. They're all going to have different configurations, different setups, different wireless cards, for example, on the physical layer side, but there's also a lot of how it's deployed, how it's set up. You want to make sure you cover all of those. A lot of IoT companies networking's not their background. They're an IoT company, they build something that's very good. They build a thermostat, they build a pool sensor. They're experts at making sure that my pool has enough salt in it, but they may not be experts at making sure that their device has a DHCP address.
Or the meat is at the right temperature.
Yes, the meat's at the right temperature, the pool's all of those things. They're really good at that stuff. They're great. I love all of those things. I have several of those gadgets at my house, but they're not networking experts. And so those companies are trying to figure out how they validate their IoT devices. Another aspect of the manual is testing is reproducibility. So you'll see something, it's there for a fleeting moment and then it's gone. You can't figure out, hey, I thought I saw this once. Having to reproduce it when running testing manually can be very difficult. It means you have a lot of screenshots, a lot of writing stuff down to make sure you're doing all the steps in the same order. That's a real problem. And that leads to the lack of automated tools that are clearly telling you, hey, you're doing this wrong, or this is how this should work. This is failing. Your device isn't supporting this or that. So these are some of the issues that we heard from people when we were asking about what's going on in this situation. And this leads us to our solution, which we call PassPort here. It's a new product that we've created that is going to help us resolve several of these issues. So today I'm going to get a demo in a minute, but I just wanted to go over some of the main features that PassPort has. It's designed specifically, for smart home products. So we have this, it basically is a device. It's a home gateway that will sit there, set up individual scenarios. So we're really focused here on scenario testing, making sure that an IoT device will encounter these different scenarios and then it will properly connect. One of the big things we heard from people was they wanted to make sure it had pass-fail results. So we have a tool that generates results for all the things that you're doing, pass-fail. It tells you clearly this is what you need to do. Here's the issue and how to address it. The biggest thing we do here is we emulate different environments to create repeatable testing. So you can run it over and over again, and it sets up the home gateway in the same situation. Gives the network this, it kind of simulates parts of the network, for example, taking out a DNS server, making sure that DNS server is down for whatever reason, whatever content provider might be switching, whatever's going on, and making sure that because it can't get to the primary DNS server, does it roll over to the second one? Does it recover correctly? What does it do in a link flap event? Does the IoT device, is it able to reconnect? Really what we're trying to do here is make sure that the connectivity and interoperability. We cover interoperability in this case on the physical layer. It's always the same tool. So it's more on the protocol interoperability side where we're making sure, hey, we introduce all of these different services. We make sure that the device can connect to them in a sensible way. And then we do a lot of failover kind of testing, making sure that the device can reconnect, do the right thing, those kind of inspection tests. So technical coverage, what do we cover with this tool? So we talked about all the scenario testing, but what does it actually cover? We cover core protocols right now. IPv6 is what we consider a core protocol. I know not everyone is going to be like, oh, I need my V6, but you need your V6, especially in today's world. All those devices that were on that numbers slide, that doesn't work with V4. You can't do carrier grade NATs and 13.5 billion devices. It's not going to work. So V6 is going to become more prominent as we go along. So that's obviously in the forefront of this tool. We also cover things like DHCP. That's a big one. A lot of IoT devices do great on startup and then struggle with things like renew, network changes, information changes. We cover all of that with DHCP. And then DNS is really core. If DNS isn't up, a lot of IoT devices struggle to connect or do what the user needs them to do. In particular, a lot of IoT devices connect to clouds. One thing we do with PassPort is it has a WAN and LAN model, so it's always connected to the internet. You can connect it up so it can get internet access, because we expect most of these IoT devices to need some connection to a cloud service or an offsite service. It doesn't mean they have to do it, but the expectation is a lot of these IoT devices will need to connect to an IoT connection. Obviously, Wi-Fi is a big part of this. In this case, a lot of the manual testing Wi-Fi can be very difficult in that you're going through all the different speeds, all the different country codes, all of the different security settings. And that can be manually and very time consuming. So one of the things we're doing there is we're quickly going through, we try to rapidly go through as many of those settings as you can to make sure that the device can connect to all these different settings. And that could alert you, hey, you're not great at these country codes or channels, those kind of things. PassPort's going to bring out when you're testing an IoT device. And the last one is important, time consuming and important, is stability and security. So on the stability side, we're going to have some test cases that run for a long period of time, week, 8 hours, whatever it is you're looking for, and it will make sure that your device stays connected. A lot of testing, it can be difficult when you're running it manually to see that a device goes away. So we're putting in some mechanisms to track the device, make sure it stays online, stays wired or wireless, keeps an address the whole time, and is functioning properly. I mentioned where it's a simulated gateway, so it acts like a regular home gateway. And when it's normal mode, when it runs a test case, it simulates different behaviors, whether it's WAN behavior, different LAN behavior, it does all of that. We also have a really nice integration with our CloudShark tool, which is a web viewable capture analysis, and I'll cover that during the live demo. We'll go over that as well. We thought this was important to show the PassPort topology. So this is kind of the setup that we expect. So PassPort sits in the middle. It's going to have a WAN connection. It's going to have a LAN. I didn't talk about this earlier, but I'll talk about it now. We expect a lot of IoT devices to connect through hubs. So when you're testing something like Matter or Zigbee or Bluetooth, those kind of technologies, this will work fine with PassPort on the IP layer. So what will happen is you'll just put the gateway in front of it and you can test the end device still, making sure that it's able to connect up and that it's getting an address. A lot of those gateways are just passing through the IP connectivity. So you pick your favorite gateway and you can connect your smart device that needs a bridge to be able to make the connection over Zigbee, Z-Wave, Bluetooth, whatever it might be. Obviously, we can still test things like set-top boxes, IP end nodes, TVs, those kind of things as well that don't need a gateway, but it also does support gateway testing. We also have, obviously a control plane. It has a GUI that you're going to see today, and it'll have an API for CI/CD people who just want to control the device and have it run their nightly runs and make sure that the IoT device, put a build on it, run all the tests that you can run that make sense, and then get those results and rinse and repeat type situation. So that's the networking setup that we have. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the live demo. One sec. While I'm doing this, guys, feel free to put in questions that you may or may not have. Let me start from the beginning. Any questions you have, there's a little box on the side. Please feel free to start asking questions as you think of them. I find it's better if you write them down while we're doing the demo, while you're thinking of it, and then don't forget in a little bit. So today, PassPort, it has a login screen. So I'm just going to log in here real quick. No, I don't want to save it. So one thing we have here, as soon as you get into PassPort, one of the things we wanted to do is make it easy for you to be able to get to it, see it, be able to run testing quickly. So what we've done here is this first page, and I'm going to go ahead and just reboot one of these two devices so you can see it. I'm going to reboot. I think that's the Raspberry Pi. So right now I have connected to PassPort. In that picture, I have a Apple TV connected to it and just a Raspberry Pi to show an embedded IoT device connected to it. In this case, I've rebooted it. We have these little power outlet switches that allow you to reboot the IoT device so you know what state it's in. In this case, I've rebooted it. As you can see, the Raspberry Pi disappeared. It's going to come back in a second when it comes back online. So you plug any device into it, wired or wireless, it'll auto detect the device. So there's no users trying to figure out, oh, what is my address? As you can see, the Raspberry Pi popped right back up. Devices, as they come and go away, will disappear from the list. So as you connect something to PassPort, it rediscovers it and says, oh, here's the information about it. It also gives the addresses and stuff for the nerds in the group who really want to know what their devices are, what they're addressed. In case you're confused on which device it's connected to, it has the MAC address, the IP address it was assigned. In this case, we're testing over a live v6 connection. So that's a global v6 address, and you can send all your traffic over v6 as well. So when you're running testing, you have all your devices here. You want to pick the one you want to test. The only thing you want to note that kind of users have to keep track of is what power outlet you plug it into on PassPort. So you click on the individual test case. It lists the test scenarios. This is where they collapse. You can see all the many test scenarios that we have. One nice feature that we have on this tool that I really like, or I've really enjoyed as I started using it, is we have these little time estimations here over on the side, and these are nice. So if you select a bunch of test cases and you're like, oh man, that's 45 minutes. I do not want to spend 45 minutes of this webinar waiting for these test cases to finish. You can sit here and think about that, or your DHCP, whatever it is, your cup of coffee, how long your lovely Zoom call is going to be, you can figure it out. And this will automatically do the estimated math of how long a test run is going to take you. So you have all of those as test cases. If you're individually wanting to know about a test case, you can click on it. It gives you a little scenario here, walks you through all the steps, what it expects. The PassPort's going to bring its LAN interface down for this test case, and then it's going to bring it back up and make sure that the device can reconnect. So, if you don't know what test cases you're running the first time, it's very nice here. We also have it over here on the left-hand bar for people who want to scroll through all the test scenarios, but this is kind of an easy way to just see what test case. So I picked the Apple TV for this one, so I'm just going to run 2 test cases while I continue to talk here in the background. You select whatever test cases. Let's make sure it can get a v4 address, and let's go ahead and do the link flapping one for v6, because that's fun when the interface goes up and down. In this case, I know it's plugged into outlet 1. This is the only piece of config. You have to know what it's plugged into. You can check, pick however many outlets you want. It'll go off and test the device. So while it's running the test case, here's the screen. It tells you what it's testing, pass, fails, how many scenarios. It does scroll through nicely these individual test cases to tell you what's going on. Also, every test case, we reboot the device. And the reason we do that is to kind of give the device a starting spot. So we're not trying to figure out how to unconfigure everything. It just reboots the device. It comes up clean. Some of the test cases wait for it to get an IP address. Other test cases are right after reboot to make sure. So this one is just making sure, hey, can you get a v4 address? The DHCP ones obviously get way more complicated with trying different things. So the first one passed. It's now running the second test case. As you can see, I didn't have to do anything. And this was 4 clicks actually to get to running this test case. So you can click on your device, click on the test cases you want to run, and then click go, and it goes off and runs the testing. So while this is running in the background, I'm going to go over to the results page here. So our results page here lists, all the individual test cases as you run them, gives you a time, gives you a result, pass, fail, a little text log right here that will pop up if you need it. And then when you have an issue, how do you figure out what's going on? You want to use one of our individual PCAPs. So here we have 2 options. We have the classic download an option, and this is the really fun one I really like. We have an integration with CloudShark, so I'm going to show that off right now. And this uploads the individual captures and shows you, hey, you can open it in a web browser. In this case, what's happening is we have a CloudShark instance that's available online. You don't have to do this, but you can put in your API tokens, You can upload to it automatically. I've really enjoyed it. It's really quick. It shows up on my web browser. I don't have to go find Wireshark. If I'm really nervous about something, I can put in notes here, use all the CloudShark features. It's been really nice having the automatic web integration for these types of test cases. What was the one I was running earlier? Yeah, this is a good one. So this is a test I ran on the Raspberry Pi. And if I quickly wanted to show I just wanted to show, hey, I want to look at the ladder for this. And this is a test case where we want to see what the device does after it gets no addresses available. And just using this, you can so quickly see like, oh, it got a NAC and then it did DHCP discovers. There's several devices we tested this on that didn't, after they got the NAC, never tried to get an address again. That was it. They just gave up on life and would sit there until the user rebooted them, which is not good. Obviously, we want the device to continue to try to recover from these types of scenarios. But this is where it's really clear. You can look at the call ladder and see what's going on in the device. There's some other cool features to use. So, everyone who gets a PassPort, we're giving them a CloudShark account to be able to upload a limited, they can upload little captures and look at this really quickly. So I think that's really cool. So here's the individual test cases ran. They, give a clear pass-fail result. In this case, the Apple TV struggled with the link test case. So let's see what it did. Oh, yeah, it didn't get an address after it came back up. So in this case, the link flapped, and when it came back up, the Apple TV does this every once in a while. This is an older gen, so I suspect it's V6. It sometimes does pretty well. We've also encountered issues with it connecting over wireless, classic IoT devices. In this case, I wired it. But yeah, this is what you'd go look into this. So you'd open the capture and you would see the link flap happening. I don't have the filters set on this. You can clearly see it goes through, runs the test, comes back up, and then it doesn't answer. I'm sure if I look here, yeah, it's not going to answer the neighbor solicitations. So it didn't come back up and get a V6 address. We rerun it, it might work. Sometimes it doesn't. Classic IoT devices, if you're working on this, you could sit down and figure out what's going on with the individual test cases. So that's all of the, how you run testing. I mentioned the test scenarios. This is really nice. Back to the capture part of this, we do have this feature where you can just start a capture and it hangs out on the LAN interface and captures all the traffic. So this is where you're not running an individual test, but you might want to see what your device is up to, what it's doing. You can start a capture, stop it, use CloudShark. My favorite one to do with these is we have this Zeek log feature. I didn't do a capture very long, but you can clearly see who it was sending. Oh, it's talking to iTunes, it's talking to iCloud, it's talking to Apple. Okay, these all make sense, right? You can clearly see quickly what's going on, what your device is doing when it starts up. I think an interesting place, and I didn't want to run one for the webinar, was stability testing. I think that if you look at how many DNS queries, or you could see some trends, if you leave your device on for X amount of time, just seeing what it's doing on the network. This is really for more, I think this is going to be important for people who are deploying IoT devices that aren't necessarily ours. They're not sure what kind of traffic is in them. They're off-the-shelf solutions that they may or may not have used before. And I think this will give them an idea of what the device is, kind of profiling it, what it's capable of doing. And as we add stability tests, we think this will, be important to people, how much traffic they're using, how often. And CloudShark can do all of that automatically. It comes with the system. So that's really cool stuff that I'm excited about, the integration with that. Lastly, we have a settings page that tells you, hey, this is PassPort's information. This is what's going on. It's wireless settings. We have a diagnostics. It'll grab everything to send to us if there's something going on with your individual testing. This is cool. We have a drag and drop software update. So we send you an update and you just drag it right in here and it'll make the update, reboot the system, and it's ready to go. Same thing for software licenses. You just drop them in. The CloudShark integration right here, we have a little API token that you drag in there. You can change obviously the PassPort. You can reset it, do a reboot here. These are all the different things that we've added that we think make this, a really interesting solution for IoT devices. The one thing I do want to drive home is we wanted to make it really easy. You click on a device, you're like, okay, I want to run these tests. Click on however many you want to run. I don't want to do that many. I'm not that crazy. Let's do, that one's 2 minutes. You click start and you're off and running. So that's 3 clicks to be able, from the start, to be able to start testing and get you going. Obviously, we support running testing overnight and all of the great CI/CD things, but I think the idea here is to get you started, get you off and running on your individual test cases. So I think that's it for the demo, Jason. So I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen unless people need me.
So yes, I don't know, Tim, do you want to talk about the demo situation as it stands right now? If you are interested in trying out PassPort, obviously contact us, sales@qacafe.com. The rest of our PassPort information is up on the website right now, and there will continue to be more articles about IoT testing and stuff like that as time goes on our website, our brand new website, if people haven't seen it yet. But yeah, Tim, can you talk about what the demo process is?
So I think what we're going to do for this one is, because of the importance of things like IoT devices connecting wireless, we have a couple of devices here, and essentially what we're going to do is set up passports here for people to demo with generic devices. They can log in, run the test, and see what's going on.